Gallows Creek wasn't the kind of place you found on purpose. It sat wedged between two dying highways, surrounded by fog-drenched pines and stories locals told in half-whispers. It had one school, one church, one gas station, and for almost 80 years, one rule: you lock your doors at night. Not for thieves, not for coyotes, but for what lived in house number 9. It stood at the end of Ashcroft Lane, a narrow, cracked road with no streetlights. Most people didn't even know it was still occupied. But the porch light was always on, and if you listened closely past midnight, sometimes the piano would play. The Aldridge family moved in during the fall of 1989. No announcement, no introductions, just a U-Haul, dark curtains, and 4 children no one ever really saw. Daniel Aldridge was a clinical psychologist, former research faculty at a behavioral lab that's since been quietly shut down. Ruth Aldridge, his wife, was known to collect porcelain dolls, hundreds of them. She'd dress them, name them, speak to them, and place them in the front window, as if they were watching the street. At first, the town welcomed them, sort of, a potluck, some cautious smiles. But things shifted quickly. There were no birthday parties, no school records, no visits to the store. And the few who claimed to have met the children said the same thing. They never spoke, and they never blinked long enough. It started small, a missing dog. Then, 2. One boy, Kyle Thomas, swore he saw a little girl digging in his yard at 2 a.m. He described her as barefoot, pale, and wearing a mask made from a doll's face. The police came. They checked house number 9. Daniel answered the door wearing a robe and surgical gloves. He said the girl didn't belong to them. They had no daughter, he said. Only 2 sons, quiet boys, homeschooled. Still, the town started locking their doors, and every night at 9 p.m., like clockwork, you'd hear it. Click, 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 down every street. No one said it aloud, but everyone felt it. That house was watching, and whatever was inside wasn't sleeping. Gallows Creek was a town wrapped in fog and time, the kind of place where people passed down land and secrets. Everyone knew everyone, and everything until 1989. That was the year the Aldridge family bought house number 9. No realtor, no public record of the sale. Just one morning, the for sale sign was gone and the shutters were closed. Daniel Aldridge, a man with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. His wife, Ruth, barely spoke. They were present, but never there. The town tried at first. Baked goods, church invites, a PTA welcome basket. Everything was declined politely but firmly. They had 4 children. At least, that's what people thought. You'd only see them from a distance. Escorted in and out of the car. Heads down. Matching grey coats. No school enrollment. No medical records. Daniel was said to be a former behavioral psychologist, worked at a facility back east that closed under confidential circumstances. He claimed to be homeschooling the children, studying resilience in isolation. By the 2nd month, people stopped asking questions. Then came the incidents, a missing terrier, then a stray. Then a boy named Logan Sharp, only 8 years old, vanished after playing tag with friends 2 houses down from number 9. The search lasted 3 weeks. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers combing the woods, nothing. At the candlelight vigil, someone finally said it aloud, "Check the house." Of course, the sheriff did briefly. A wellness check. The Aldridges were cooperative. That's the word used in the report. Daniel offered tea. Ruth smiled too long. But there were no signs of Logan, and no signs of any children. The officer noted that all the windows were covered with black fabric. There was a smell, faint but strange, something like burnt sugar mixed with antiseptic. He didn't stay long, didn't ask to see the basement, didn't push further. But the final line of that report has never been released to the public. All we know is what one officer told his wife that night. Something isn't right in that house. It was a leaky pipe that brought the first outsider inside. A county maintenance worker called in after the Aldridges reported a water issue beneath the kitchen. He wasn't inside for more than 5 minutes before requesting to leave. His report noted only this: basement access sealed by a padlocked iron door. No response when I asked what was behind it. Ruth smiled, Daniel didn't. That was a Tuesday. By Sunday, someone else tried to leave house number 9. Around 2:12 a.m., a gas station clerk spotted a barefoot girl stumbling across Route 7. Her clothes were torn. She was thin, shaking. Her hands were covered in writing. She didn't speak, just handed over a single page, torn from a journal, then ran. The page read, Subject 6 failed the mirror test again. Subject 3A bites too much. The girl who screamed too much is gone. I think they made her stop screaming. At the bottom, in shaky handwriting, please don't let them find me. Child Protective Services arrived 2 days later. The Aldridges were ready, calm, documents prepared, smiling. They said they homeschooled all 4 children, had lesson plans, immunization records, but no children were seen. None called out. None peeked from behind the door. The agent wrote that she heard chanting, soft, rhythmic, coming from behind the walls. Daniel claimed it was a phonics exercise. That agent never returned to the property. In fact, she left her job 3 weeks later. Said she couldn't work cases involving minors anymore. Around this time, neighbors reported strange sounds late at night, tapes playing in reverse, mechanical whirring, laughter on loop. A former officer, one of the first to ever enter the house, resigned without warning. When asked why, he only said, "That place isn't natural, it's a lab dressed as a home." On November 3rd, the sheriff's office received an envelope. No return address. Inside, one photograph and a letter. The photo showed what looked like a hidden doorway, cracked drywall behind a pantry shelf. On the wall, tally marks. Dozens, possibly hundreds. The letter read, "You'll find what you're looking for behind the pantry wall, but be ready. You'll wish you hadn't." That was all the sheriff needed. The raid was scheduled for the next evening. The storm that night was almost cinematic. Sheets of rain, wind strong enough to rattle the gutters, as if the house knew it was about to be opened. They entered through the back. 6 officers, body cams, warrants. What they found wasn't a home, it was a maze. Every room was a different scene. One held nothing but a bed, a one-way mirror, and a speaker embedded in the ceiling. Another, chains bolted to the wall, drawings in crayon, most of them depicting eyes. Every window was covered in thick black film. A kitchen cabinet full of expired medication. And then, the pantry. They pulled the shelf away and revealed a door. No knob, just a keypad. It took 3 tries before it clicked open. Behind it, a narrow staircase. Downward. Wet stone walls. No light. At the base, the air was thick, almost metallic. And what they found, no training had prepared them for. 3 children sat huddled in the corner, alive, barely, thin, silent, eyes too wide for their age. They didn't run. They didn't speak. One just raised a hand and pointed to the far wall. 11 shackles, rusted, empty. And beneath them, carvings, dates, names, crossed out, symbols no one could translate. Scattered across the basement, journals, folders, VHS tapes labeled only with numbers, audio cassettes marked Response Cycle A and Punishment Variant D. And then, one final journal entry written in what appeared to be Ruth's hand. Subject 2 no longer responds to light or pain. It is evolving. We must isolate it further. It watches us now, even when it shouldn't be able to. Daniel and Ruth Aldridge were arrested the same night the children were found. They didn't resist. In fact, they didn't speak at all. In the police cruiser, Daniel simply stared at his hands. Ruth hummed quietly, the same lullaby heard on the tapes. The charges were staggering. Child cruelty, illegal human experimentation, unlawful imprisonment, conspiracy, and worse. The media descended like vultures. Headlines called it the House 9 horror. Court dockets labeled it the Gallows Creek case. But locals called it what it really was, the house that broke the town. Testimonies were sealed, most evidence never released to the public, but a few leaked files revealed the scope of the horror. Sleep deprivation studies, trauma loop conditioning, electrodes, deprivation tanks, and children whose identities had been erased. In the end, only 3 of the children were confirmed to be biologically related to the Aldridges. The others? Missing persons, cold cases, runaways. Some had been gone for over a decade. One survivor, age unknown, later wrote a memoir under a pseudonym. Its title was just one line. "We weren't raised. We were redesigned." In the book, they describe being punished for non-compliance, having their names replaced with numbers, being told pain was a threshold test and love was a distraction. They speak of Subject 2, the one no one ever saw, locked deeper than the others. Subject 2, who according to the journals didn't sleep, didn't speak, and eventually stopped blinking. After the trial, the town of Gallows Creek was never the same. More than a third of the residents left within a year. Shops closed, the school consolidated with the next county. Even the street signs near Ashcroft Lane were removed. House number 9 was boarded up, its windows nailed shut. A month later, it caught fire. No suspects, no arrests. The report listed it as an accidental electrical fault. But everyone knew better. Today, the lot is overgrown. Nothing grows near the pantry foundation. Children are told to stay away. And every now and then, a traveler passing through claims to hear something. Chains, rattling, at exactly 3:17 a.m. But the questions didn't end with the fire. What happened to Subject 2, Subject 6, and Subject 11? Only 8 children were ever accounted for. Why did Daniel Aldridge's research in Germany get buried in classified archives? Why did his visa history list time spent at the Browning Institute, a facility known for behavior reprogramming during the Cold War? And perhaps most disturbing of all, why were some of the case files labeled in bold black letters property of redacted? To this day, requests for full transparency have been denied. Federal involvement was never explained, and the official statement remains simple. The matter is closed. What happened in House Number 9 wasn't just a crime, it was a system, a design, a belief that children could be shaped, not raised, conditioned, not loved. It wasn't about discipline. It wasn't even about science anymore. It was about control, obsession, and the quiet kind of madness that wears a cardigan, smiles at the neighbors, and locks the basement from the outside. The town of Gallows Creek doesn't speak of it now. They've covered the story with silence like ivy on a burned house. But the fear remains. Porch lights still flick on at sundown, doors still lock at exactly 9 p.m., and no one, No one builds on that land. Because deep down they know some things never really stay buried. And maybe, just maybe, whatever watched from inside house number 9 never left. So what do you think lived in that house? Was it evil, or was it science, gone too far, stripped of ethics, empathy, and humanity? If this story left you disturbed, intrigued, or haunted, click like, subscribe to Truth Behind Bars, and share it with someone who thinks they've heard every true crime story. Because this one rewrote the rules. And remember, some homes don't need ghosts to be horrifying. They just need people like the Aldridges and a door that no one ever should have opened.